The unemployment rate will be historic.
And your people are projecting what, 20%, 25%?
There are a range of perspectives, but those numbers are sound about right for what the peak may be.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell with a dire warning about the economy. Powell, he also said he does not see a quick economic turnaround.
This economy will recover. It may take a while. It may take a period of time. It could stretch through the end of next year. We really don't know.
Even one of the president's own men echoing the sentiment. Steve Mnuchin not optimistic. Hear the Treasury Secretary testifying on Capitol Hill today.
I think the job numbers will get worse before they get better. So I just want to be very clear that I think that June will be a very difficult quarter.
So the big question now is, what will Congress do as the economy continues to skid? The House, they passed the $3 trillion stimulus bill last week, but it is DOA in the Republican-led Senate. Democrats, they'd like more aid to go to the states and additional payments directly to the American people. But many Republicans, they're against that idea, as they're concerned it will encourage people not to work. I want to bring in our guest, Austan Goolsbee. He an ABC News contributor as well as a former Obama economic advisor. You know, for a lot of folks obviously dealing with the uncertainty, they'll hear what Chairman Powell says. They'll even hear what Secretary Mnuchin says in terms of, you know, just the depths of the economy and also how long it'll take before we get out of it. And then they'll hear the president give a far rosier projection. What should the American public prepare themselves for as to how long this will last and what they need to do to prepare themselves for it?
Yeah, it's been confusing because they got these mixed messages going. I think the real answer to that partly depends on where you work, what sector you're in. There's some sectors where there's a lot of face-to-face interaction. They may be in for a longer, bumpier ride than in some others where social distancing, working from home is more conceivable. The good news is there are multiple countries around the world, big ones, that have gotten themselves either out of lockdown or about to be out of lockdown, and their economies have started recovering. Now, all of those countries so far have taken the path of doing a massive amount of testing so that the only people who have to go into lockdown are the people that have the disease and are infectious, and everybody else can kind of go back to work. I think if we can get on that path, we can at least see some significant recovery in a matter of weeks or months. If we don't get on that path and we just kind of keep bobbing around where people are fearful that if they go out of their house, they're going to get sick, then this thing could be with us for a very long time.
What concerns you more? I mean, you look at some of the other global markets that you've seen. Germany, in some respect, now retrenching here after they've seen another spike here in cases. But then when you look domestically, you have a regional or a state-by-state approach to all of this. And the one thing I keep hearing is the worst thing that could happen is you try and build up the confidence of the public. It's safe to go back to work. It's safe to go back out into a regular commerce. And then there's another wave of it. How do you mitigate so much of that uncertainty?
Yeah, geez, I think you're exactly right that might destroy our credibility. If the government tells you, yes, it is safe, and then you go out and then it turns out it's not safe, then the next time I think the government tells you, oh, and now we messed it up before, but now everything is safe, people will be less inclined to believe it, and that's problematic. Now, the good news is in countries, in Korea and in parts of Germany, where you've seen a rebound of cases once they start letting off the restrictions. The rebound was not near as bad as the original spread. So I don't think it has to destroy our credibility. And we've got to do enough testing that to slow the rate of spread of the virus, we don't have to have everyone in the economy stay home. That's where we are now, and that sends the economy into free fall. But this is the number one rule of virus economics, as I say, is that the best thing for the economy is whatever slows the rate of spread of the virus. Because this isn't a normal recession. It's only a recession because people are afraid to go out of their houses. And the thing is, that decision is not made by Governor Cuomo. It's not made by President Trump. It's not made by the mayor. They can say whatever they want, but that decision is made in the minds of everyday Americans deciding, do they think it's safe to go out of their house, to go to work, and stuff like that. And that's what we've got to overcome. And that's what, on the policy side, we've got to produce enough relief and rescue money that people don't, while we're waiting for that moment to come, people don't get evicted and have their gas shut off or have their small business shut down because they can't make their rent payment. And that's kind of the dilemma that the economy faces.
To that end, coincidentally, a lot of the states that are viewing this program are in the quote-unquote blue states that we heard from Mitch McConnell. Can you use proper economic terms to talk about the utter insanity it is that we're going to basically play favorites if they're red or they're blue, forgetting about the hypocrisy about who puts more into the government than they get back on an annualized basis, that's going to be part of the metric here that gets decided who gets relief, and then also cutting off food stamps, for example, at a time where you know there's an acute need. We've seen crises before, but I haven't seen it as politicized as this. Am I missing something?
Look, I hope that you're missing something, but I fear that you're not missing something. We first saw in the supplying of medical equipment some emphasis on if you're in the same party as the president, then you might get more access to ventilators, protective equipment, and stuff like that. If we apply standards, political standards, to rescue packages, I think that's a scary road to go down. And where that will run into problems is we're going to now come to the end of June, and the so-called payroll protection program, the small business lending facility and forgivable loans that the government was giving to small business, is to protect. They're going to keep workers on the payroll till the end of June. If thousands of businesses now come to the end of June and run out of money and go bankrupt, we will face a whole second wave of increase in unemployment, even more than what we just saw, which was record-breaking. And if that's going to be determined by politics, who gets that money, I think you're going to see some real anger on the part of people around the U.S.
Finally, Austin, for those who saw a little testimony today, but I thought even more acutely what we saw on 60 Minutes this past weekend from the Fed chairman. He basically would say, go big or go home. This is not the time, and it sounds bizarre, when we're talking throwing around trillions like potholes, to have a small economic response. Do it on the half-full side. What opportunities does this crisis present for the federal government, if it chose, to get money and programs in the hands of people that will most quickly accelerate this economy, let alone that need it most?
Yeah, it's kind of a fascinating question of both practical and philosophical nature. I think that the number one thing you can do to help the economy has nothing to do with the economy, and that is to slow the rate of spread of that virus. And certainly in other countries where their economies haven't had nearly as bad an experience as ours, and they've come back, that's the approach that they took. I think on a deeper level, the fact that millions of people, most people in the United States, get their health insurance from their employer means that a health-based negative hit on the economy that leads 20, 30 million people to lose their job, and that automatically means that 20, 30 million people lose their health insurance, kind of shows you what's crazy about the system. And so I would not be surprised if coming out of this crisis, we have a lot more discussion about how do we get affordable health care that's not just tied to your employer. So if you lose your job, you don't lose that health insurance.
Austan Goolsbee, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Up next, a psychologist will join us to discuss an aspect of COVID that, frankly, not enough people are talking about, how it is causing an outbreak of mental health issues and problems.